Welcome to another presentation in my series specially made for the business person. This time it's on fixed assets. As an auditor, when I look at the figure of fixed assets in the balance sheet, my mind is instantaneously riveted to the maze of provisions enshrined in various statutory legislation and pronouncements regarding recognition, accounting, depreciation, valuation, etc. That, of course, is the technical side of it. In this presentation, I am concerned about how a businessman should look at it, with the objective of assessing the state of affairs of his business, of where he stands, or should I say, does not stand. Let me amplify my thought. Particularly for capital-intensive industries such as in manufacturing, the fixed assets figure in the balance sheet could be a substantial one. And we all know that the value of fixed assets has a direct nexus and impacts the net worth of the business entity. If this figure is grossly incorrect, you could be terribly mistaken about your net worth, apart from many other things. To add to the complexity, the probability is very high that the brand value will not be reflected in the balance sheet. Brand value here refers to the premium that a company can command from a product with a well-established name when compared to its generic equivalent. It takes years and years to build this intangible. But there are even far-reaching questions that the businessman should ask to himself. We will dwell on that in the discussions ahead. We come to the next slide. Fixed assets are not stated at realizable values, as they are not meant to be traded or sold in the normal course, unless they are condemned or retired. For me, from a business perspective, the fixed assets need to be looked at in different ways. Is it technology relevant today? What are the economic lives of the fixed assets? Has the organization been depreciating or impairing its fixed assets correctly from time to time? Are the rates of depreciation appropriate to capture the consumed lives of the fixed assets? In the books, many business entities tend to depreciate fixed assets on the basis of standard rates of depreciation, which are prescribed by the statute, which in turn is predicated on a presumption of economic lives of such categories of assets. While the larger business entity is required to review regularly for impairment, the smaller entities may not really do it in entirety. It is here that the values of the fixed assets as they appear in the balance sheet could tend to go awry and be unrealistic. Are the repairs and maintenance costs so substantial that they hint at an aging plant and machinery setup? Does the entity have the resources to replace them as they inevitably or sometimes precipitously age? These are critical questions that often get sidetracked as one is obsessed with profitability and tend to rely on book figures. As a businessman, you could easily go wrong in your understanding of fixed assets. It requires intense brainstorming sessions to review them, and that will stand you in good stead. We come to slide 3, and these points are very insightful as you seek answers to questions that look beyond the present. When you closely look at your facility with its space, plant and machinery, and the technology used, the thought could occur as to whether they are contemporary enough in terms of quality, automation, and intensiveness of manpower deployment. Or is it really required to have a modern facility? It is very well possible that you are positioned in the market in such a way that a traditional facility with a conventional technology could still serve and succeed profitably in the foreseeable future. This requires foresight and wisdom, which should be tested and given a reality check from time to time. It is worthwhile comparing peers, competitors in the industry who are doing well to see where you stand in terms of these dynamics relating to the type of facility and which generation of technology is deployed therein. It is a good learning for the business. Some businesses get stuck in the sense that they find it extremely difficult to extricate themselves from a grounded technology which has very little automation. Here, extrapolating in the business plan gives you a good picture as to where your business is headed. If the road ahead looks a largely losing proposition, it's better to think differently today, which could even involve redesigning or thinking about replacing the plant. For capital-intensive businesses, particularly in manufacturing, an interesting point for consideration is the value of landed property. In the older entities, I have seen land acquired decades back and obviously presented at acquisition cost, that is your purchase price. It needs to be considered whether it's a productive asset, a disguised investment which appreciates in value. For internal review, you need to do that evaluation. During the internal review, it is worthwhile ascribing a fair value for such understated assets. It gives a different dimension to the asset value and consequently the net worth, apart from making you conscious of the resources you actually command. A lot of ideas surface during the brainstorming of how best to exploit the surplus land within the same business or even diversifying into another if the conditions are right. Whereas no immediate answers are available, keeping the discussions going and researching on possibilities provide a good channel of evaluation to best exploit this valuable resource and to explore the consequent funding required for the action that you contemplate. So, the true picture of fixed assets and an honest evaluation of it in terms of its strategic relevance to the future is something which I would like a businessman never to lose sight of. Operational relevance today and strategic relevance tomorrow, using both the microscope and the telescope, are vital for any business to evaluate so that you can last the distance. So friends, that brings me to the end of another special capsule for the entrepreneur, the business person. Trust you have enjoyed watching and listening to it. Thank you for your time.